Okay, we should be going live. We should be live now. I'm joined again by Tasha Danzig. We chatted about her band LadyAxe a couple of weeks ago, and we touched on her horror writing and her writing in general. I thought it'd be an idea to get in touch and have a general chit chat about your writing. So, do you write under your name now, don't you? Before that, you did a lot of ghostwriting.
Yeah, I still do ghostwriting,
Mm. How
but
did that happen? Let's go back. Let's go back, guys. I was thinking, let's just do it chronologically. Well, what's your first memory of writing? And did you discover a love for writing and reading? Where did it come from originally?
you mean before professionally?
Yeah, just when you was a
Oh,
kid. What was the
yeah.
first?
Somewhere in high school. Somewhere in high school, I remember I was the only kid that was never, when the teacher says, I want you to do an essay. I was the only kid that didn't go, oh, I was like, yes, yes, what? You know, um, so I was in high school. I was very good at creative writing automatically. I didn't the thing is, I was never a reader. So people say you have to be a reader to be a good writer. So I'm not sure, then I mustn't be a good writer at all. But I remember in high school, my teacher on one of my pieces saying, one day you're going to be a great writer. Sometimes I love your material, sometimes it scares me. And then I thought, no, I'm not going to be a writer, I'm going to be in a band.
But
So
you
that's
ended up
where it
doing both.
started.
Yeah.
That's where it started, yeah.
But your love for music came around at the same time as your love for writing, or?
No, I could sing before I could walk.
Uh,
Yeah, I was always a singer. I had my first time on stage when I was 4 years old.
yeah.
As my parents had a like a side band that did weddings and stuff in the 70s and 80s.
Yeah.
And they one day when I was 4 years old, they put me on stage for fun. And I refused to sing until they started passing a hat around to put money in. that's what they that's what they tell me. So
Well, you
that
you
was
was had
my
an eye for finance.
I refused to sing. I was too shy. But when they
Yeah.
said, okay, we'll pay you, I thought, okay. Then I got on stage. Apparently, that's what I hear.
Right. So you're writing when you're doing your own writing, not ghostwriting. It's mainly in the horror genre. Where do you
Oh, absolutely.
remember? Do you remember your first like dabblings into horror and what made you
Yes.
scared and what made you want to write scary and horrific stories?
My dad is a monster. My dad, my dad is a downright sadist. Okay,
Right.
not a sexual sadist,
No.
just a sadist. He
Right.
he he always got great pleasure out of scaring the shit out of me because
Right.
I'm his only child, so I'm his entertainment.
Yeah.
And he used to chase me down dark corridors and stuff. Like I'd go to the toilet, when I come out, you'd be hiding in one of the rooms. And I quickly got over it. I mean, at first, of course, I was hysterical the whole time, but then I got a sort of a. It started. I liked it. I liked feeling the fear. I liked feeling scared. So eventually, I sort of got over it. So you would scare me, and I wouldn't react at all.
Yeah.
And that's when I realized I like the feeling of being scared, and I like scaring other people. So that's how it
Yeah.
started when I was little, very little.
Right. So, do you have got any like memories of your first, other than your dad scaring you, were your first like horror things, like first horror movie you watched, or first? So you
Yes.
didn't really read horror books. Did you tell stories, or did your parents tell you
The
scary
thing was,
stories?
between my parents, my mother's family, my mother and her sister and my grandmother, they used to love when we would gather on the farm. There was no electricity. So
Yeah.
we entertained ourselves at night by sitting around the kitchen table and telling ghost stories, but true ghost stories, ghost stories that's been told down in our family.
Yeah.
So that part was my mom. On my dad's side, my dad loved movies. He loves watching movies, but he's a Western fan. I
No.
grew up with Leaf and Cleef and Clint Eastwood, and but sometimes he would slip in like a horror movie. And I will never forget, the first horror movie I ever saw was actually an episode of an American horror anthology called Dark Vengeance. about a wooden horse ornament that starts moving by itself. At the time, I was about 6 years old. It scared the shit out of me. But again, it was more like it was a fun, a thrill for me. That was the first horror movie I ever saw. And 35 years later, I finally managed to track it down, and now I have it on my hard drive. So,
was it scary when you watched it again for the first time?
It was actually very creepy. It starts very lame. I mean, it's a 70s movie. You know, you're so used to modern stuff and special effects. But if you, as it progresses, the atmosphere they created, like only they could do in the 70s and 60s. The atmosphere they created was truly macabre. You know, it's a very creepy show even today for me to watch. Yeah,
they kind of did somehow did better, didn't they? Because they didn't have to go with jump scares and stuff like that. They were able to create a much. Scares. You look some of the black
subtle slow burn, which is the way I write. I'm not interested. I mean, I can't really jump scare you in a book. You know, all I can do is to fuck with your head so that you scare yourself. I just suggest stuff. I've noticed long ago that if you write too graphically, you desensitize the reader. And if you just suggest, you're more likely to let them scare themselves. People, we're all different, and everybody has a thing or whatever scares you. Now, if you suggest correctly, every individual will create his own paradigm of fear from what you're suggesting, and it could be worlds apart from person to person. And that's more effective.
Okay. So talk about your early horror memories. When did you start, when you was writing for yourself, you used to like essays and that, did you do a lot of storybook writing? Was it always scary and like ghostly stories from the beginning?
It was always grotesque. It was, I don't know. I think it comes from the, getting scared all the time and the ghost stories being told. It appealed to me much more. But also there's something that I believe we all have. I think we all know what we are before we know what we are. Like you have an affinity for certain things, but you don't know why when you're little. And I've always loved scary things. I've always loved graveyards. My mother, who is the polar opposite of me, she could never understand this because she's scared to death of graveyards. And she couldn't understand that I always want to go there. I couldn't explain why, though. I just like being there. It's nice. I said to her, it feels like home. And she went, it's not supposed to feel like home. It's a scary place. You're supposed to stay out of there. I was like,
keep away.
It. Yeah. But I loved it.
Yeah. So have you got any memories of like your early writing? Have you got any like memorable stories that you might have written as a kid, like it's still in your head to this day? Or
I wrote one about, it was a school essay. They give you the title and then you have to do something with it. But it was a general thing. It wasn't supposed to be scary. It was just whatever. They just said, write an essay about the red basket. The red basket. And this was in my own language. So I wrote about the red basket, and I wrote about an old woman walking down the street. It's a very short story. It's an essay.
Yeah.
And then a guy trying to rob her, and then finding when he takes the basket from her and beats the shit out of her and probably kills her, runs away, and looking in the basket finds the head of her husband. So that was the kind of stuff I would always write. And some teachers didn't get it. some teachers saw the writing ability and the creativity, but other teachers were just like, no.
You never got sent to counselling.
No,
We want you to
they
talk to this.
tried. They tried, but I was in too many schools. We moved every 6 months. So
Right. And so you always loved writing. Do you do it outside of school as well, just on your own, like because you?
yeah, I
Mm,
did. I did it to stay sane. I had a very stormy childhood at
mm,
home, and I used to hide in my room, put on my headphones. Okay, even before I was a metalhead, I would put on
mm,
headphones and write, to get my grudges out, because I was born a very temperamental person. I'm very physical. I physically react to things, which is bad.
mm.
So in order to articulate all this and to process it and not get into trouble, I would write it out. And I still do that to this day. If I'm pissed off about something, if I don't like somebody, I kill them in a book. You know, it's it sounds very juvenile, but it works. It's better than
No,
going out there and hurting
yeah.
people.
Some people punch a wall, or they got a punch bag or something. If you can write it and get it out of
Exactly.
your
You
system,
gotta do
uh,
your thing.
yeah, whatever gets you catharsis, isn't it? Really. Um,
Exactly.
so how did it start? You because obviously you had your band, but was it always your job? Have you always been a ghostwriter? Was that the first job you got
Oh
into?
no.
How did you come
Well,
into ghostwriting?
my mother was very traditional. Um, I had two kids by the time I was 22. Okay, shit happens. Um, and when I was now a single mother of two, she said to me, "You can't write. You can't raise children as a writer. You will never be a writer. Forget about it. You need an office job. An office job is the only job to take care of two kids." And I
Yeah,
believed her because my mother is supposed to know better than me, right? Oh God, was I wrong? Because
yeah,
I spent 20 years temping, because I don't like permanent things. I don't like being tied down. Plus, in that political climate, white people started losing their jobs. They took our
yeah,
jobs and replaced us. So
yeah.
I couldn't find a permanent job anyway. So I was temping wherever I
Mm.
could. And even though I would have wanted to be a writer, she told me, no, you have to have a degree to be a writer. You can never publish books unless you are a professor in literature. And I believed her, big
Yeah,
mistake.
that
20
was
years
her lack of
later,
experience, really, wasn't it? I suppose.
and very negative. My parents
Mm.
were always very negative, and I don't know why, because they always told me, no, you can't do that. That's for other people, or rich people get to go overseas. You can never go overseas. and
Mm.
and you believe them because you're impressionable and you know nothing about life, so you take that advice.
Mm.
And 20 years later, I was stuck in offices, and my kids had to take care of themselves because I would have to travel at 6 in the morning to get to work at 8. My kids were in
Mm.
school. They had to dress themselves and get themselves to school.
Yeah.
And 20 years later, I become a writer. My kids are out of the house now, taking care of themselves. And suddenly, I'm a stay at home mom now because I'm writing and I'm
No.
making a decent living for the first time in 20 years.
How did that happen? That you started? How did
Oh, it's a
you?
nice one. It's a nice story. I was sitting in an office stapling papers. That was my job. It's really, I'm not the smartest girl in the world, but I'm pretty fucking smart. I have a
Mm.
pretty decent IQ. And here I
Yeah.
was sitting.
You
I was
certainly got a better imagination than stapling all day.
I sat there. This is someone who graduated with distinctions, but never got to college and ended up raising kids. So at
Mm.
40 years old, I'm sitting stapling things together like a fucking monkey, you know? So I knew that my contract was going to finish in a week. So I asked one of the women, because you're not allowed to go on the internet. You're not allowed to have computers, okay? Because you're doing stapling.
Right.
So during lunchtime, I was looking for work. So I registered with all these sites online to try and find another office job. But I discovered on one of these sites that they have writing jobs. And for no reason. I don't know why. I just went with it and I applied for this job for a woman who was looking for someone to write a horror novel.
Ah.
And I wrote her this letter. I just said to her, listen, I'm as good as H.P. Lovecraft. I never thought I was going to get it. I was being silly, you know?
Yeah.
I said to her, I'm as good as H.P. Lovecraft and I can write this book for you. I didn't think she would even respond. And the next day she said, okay, you're hired. And that was my first job on that site. This woman ended up paying me like a quarter of what she said she was going to pay me. So she done me in. But then another guy hired me because I was now on this site. And he paid me upfront and in full. So I realized, okay, it's not everybody that does this. I can maybe do this. And that's how I started. Eventually, I had 5 or 6 clients that I wrote for constantly because in South Africa, the currency is so weak that you can offer the cheapest rates and they will pick you because you're cheap. Because in your country, their currency is like 15 times what they pay you.
So you're getting paid in American dollars, mainly. Yeah.
I had a lot of work, yeah.
And what kind of stuff did you write? Did they just give you a synopsis of what they want you to write, or do you have to make up the ideas yourself? How does that ghostwriting work?
Usually, the correct way for ghostwriting is for a client who has their own idea. They have their idea, they have their story. They're just not good at writing. You know, the way to describe stuff or whatever. So what they do is they write their story in, say, 1 page. You know, it's about this guy and he does this and he does that and then this happens, short. And then they give it to you and they say, listen, we want the book round about this length or that length. And then you quote them on it and then you write them their book. This is how it's supposed to be. But I ended up also with clients who don't have their own story and just, I've got to write everything out of my head and then they take the credit for it. And you take those jobs because you have to have a job.
Yeah. So you kind of just churning out stuff in the end, I suppose, when you're working for ghostwriters like that.
That's how Order of the Black Sun came to be. Yeah.
Yeah, is that the main one that you wrote for? That was like the first big franchise that you worked on, or the big first client?
Yes.
Or...
That's the 24 novels I wrote in that franchise entirely. He would just give me a title and I would create an entire novel, an action adventure, historically accurate fiction book with high ratings on Amazon, but he puts his name on it so people think it's a male writer, which is hilarious.
So how many of them have there been? Because you've not done all of them. Other people have done other books now because you stopped working on it, haven't you? So they're still going on, I take it.
Sorry?
There's still other people writing them. It wasn't just you wrote them, though, was it? There's other people also in that franchise, or
when I quit, he had to get somebody else. Yes.
Right. But until that point,
I wrote everything alone.
Yeah.
Yes.
So what is it?
Book 24, and then he's I quit, and he had to get someone else, and he went on to book 31, I think.
Okay. I won't go into that book anymore. I want to get onto your own writing. So, because you haven't actually done so much of put your own books out in your own name. What happened there?
Never had time.
No.
I never had time. No.
And is it why? You go. You speak.
As soon as I quit Order of the Black Sun, I suddenly had time to do other stuff. It's like I told you before, writing for him, for P.W. Child, which is also a fake name. It's not even the real guy. No. P.W. Child is just a name he made up to get attention towards the books. When I wrote for him, I was literally sleeping and working. I didn't have time for music. I didn't have time to write any of my own books. No time for anything. I couldn't go out on a Friday night because I'd be working for the deadline. Because I had to write him an entire novel every month. And that takes up all your time because you still have to research everything. You have to check your plots. And it's about Nazi treasures and Tesla experiments and stuff. So you have to really know your shit. And your research just, it kills your mind. You feel like a zombie eventually. So when I quit that, the first time in 2018, in January 2018, I realized, right, first of all, I've got to find new work. But secondly, I have to finally write my own work, because people who read Order of the Black Sun they contact me and they go, where are your other books, your own books? And then I go, I haven't written any of my own books because I don't have time. And that's when I wrote Beware the Chair to start with. I wrote Beware the Chair a long time ago, but I rewrote it into a novel.
Right. And what was that like? So you wasn't until you started doing ghostwriting, you were too busy doing office work to actually do any writing. But did you have like ideas, and was you wanting to write before then? Or did the ghostwriting get you into writing again and make you think, I want to do my own stuff?
Here's another cool thing. When I was about 23, 24, I had one permanent job working for the credit bureau. And I was a receptionist at the credit bureau. And during lunchtime, they had an old typewriter there, an electronic one, but nobody was using it. During lunchtime, I would spend my lunchtime typing out stories to keep my sanity, sort of to escape, because I was very unhappy with my life. I never wanted to have kids, and suddenly I had kids, and I never wanted to have a day job, and now I have a day job. So it was a very stormy, rough time for me. I couldn't cope with my daily life. I didn't like what I had become. So I would spend every lunchtime on that typewriter writing stories to put myself somewhere else, just to create a world where I am happy. And actually, my manager came to stand there one day and she said, "What are you writing?" And I said to her, "You know what? While I'm sitting here writing, I'm imagining I'm an old woman." You're going to love this. I'm imagining or daydreaming that I'm an old woman wearing Gothic clothes, sitting in an old house in Scotland or Ireland, writing horror books for a living. And it was just a daydream. And 3 years ago, I became the old woman sitting in an Irish cottage writing horror books. So I used to escape that way.
Did all your books get written when you went to Ireland because you had more kind of time to do it? You had, less work was coming in, I suppose, from the ghostwriting, and you had like a lot of peace there. So was it more the fact you wanted to get your books out so you could try and get some money from writing your books, or was the stories there and you wanted to get them out? Was it a bit of both?
It was both. It was more to get the stories out because, like I said, it really made me feel miserable when people would ask me, where's your own books? Where can we read you? And all I could give them was these books that they would then buy, and the other guy gets the money. They would read me. They would pay someone else so they can read me. So I knew that I had to write my own books because it was driving me crazy. I still, as we're sitting here, have a million ideas. I just don't have the time. And I just don't have the morale at the moment here specifically. But that is why I started writing, to get those stories out. And also, hopefully, people will get to know me as a writer instead of a ghostwriter. Also get to know my personal stuff.
And hope to grow a fan base so you'll have regular people buying your stuff.
Yeah, I do. They're a handful, but
hopefully.
At least they get it, I would rather have, like I said with LadyAxe as well, I'd rather have a few fans that appreciate and understand what I'm doing than to whore myself out and write what I think people want to see and then be a big star and stinking rich, but I'm a fake because I'm not writing me. You see, I have my fans.
Let's talk more about your horror writing and your horror stories because we've got another 35 minutes. So how would you describe your type of horror and your writing style, and what have influenced you? What writers or television or films have influenced you most in your writing, do you think?
That's a lot of stuff. You're going to have to repeat
I
that later.
know. Yeah. I'll let you just flow with that one.
If I remember everything. My style of writing, actually, in the beginning, I got shut down a lot by, no offense, but the average dumb American reader, because Americans prefer simplicity, little words and to the
Yeah.
point. Whereas at the time, I was very much influenced by M.R. James and by Edgar Allan Poe and by
Yeah.
H.P. Lovecraft, not in subject matter so much as in language use.
Yeah.
Because previously, I have been a poet. I was a dark poet. So my work was very poetic, and I intended it that way. I never wanted to dumb down my shit for people. I wanted only a select few who get it to
Mm.
read me. But I have had to bring it down a bit so that it's more understandable for the average person. Instead of using, I used to love writing in like high English or old English in the vein of Edgar Allan Poe
Yeah.
because of its poetic consistency. I love that. And also, if you're writing horror, if you're writing about emotion, especially if you're writing about psychology, which is where terror lies, you have to articulate that in a more surreptitious way. You have to be
Right.
more subtle. And that is my subject matter is the things I like in movies. And I know I'm one of the few. I prefer supernatural horror. Slashers and zombies don't intrigue me whatsoever. Um, so common violence to me isn't, it is horror in real life. But
Mm.
if I want to watch something that scares me, it needs to be something unknown. It needs to be something that makes me uneasy.
Mm.
And showing me slashers, I mean, my dad's a butcher and I come from
Mm.
South Africa. We know
Mm.
blood. Okay. That's
Yeah.
nothing to us. So for me to write things that scare me, because I write what scares me. And if it works for you, great. If it
Yeah.
doesn't work for you, read something else.
Mm.
Um, but that is my thing. I like supernatural horror. I like Beware the Chair. I like the dark figure sitting in the corner in the chair and nobody knows what it is or why it's there. I like that. I like
Yeah.
subtle. I like a good old fashioned ghost story.
Mm.
But I don't stick to just that. I
Yeah.
do venture into other things.
Mm. And I think, like, maybe just thinking about what you're saying, the gore and the slashes, they're horrible. They're horrible, but they're not actually horror.
Yes.
They're horror in, like, but not like the kind of
Yes.
creeping, it's just like
Well,
violent, nasty of horror, isn't it?
that's how I see it. It's a pointless brand and a cheap brand of horror. It's like tits, woo girls
Yeah.
flashing their tits in a horror movie.
Yeah.
So what? I've got tits too. It doesn't present anything that makes you think or
Yeah.
makes you think twice. Um, whereas in horror, I'd like to call gore senseless horror.
Mm.
But if you've been in a situation like the guy in the back seat, everybody who watches these movies with there's a guy hiding in the back seat
Oh,
and
yeah, yeah.
driving down, and everybody goes, "That's not scary." Try being in that situation. You
Yeah.
see, people have been desensitized because they know they're safe on this side of the
Mm.
screen. But if you really think about slasher movies, if you really think about someone in your house that doesn't belong there and he's there to kill you, that is an aspect of horror in
Mm.
real life. But because it's been done to death, people don't understand the true fear that goes along with that situation.
Yeah.
Whereas supernatural horror is still, it's still a varied subject. Like you never know what kind of supernatural horror is going on.
Mm.
So that's easier for me to instill fear with than your generic slasher.
I've been thinking about that as well. Like in the slasher movies, you don't really emphasize with the victims because you watch a slasher film or read a slasher book for them to all get killed. You don't care they're going to get killed. You don't give a shit. It's like get on with the killing. But if you like,
You're for the
yeah,
killer.
yeah.
And you know why? Because secretly we are all killers. Honestly, No, I think it's a very like eating, fucking, dying, shitting, and killing. I think murder is a very natural reaction that we have, but we have been conditioned to suppress it. And I think those slasher movies where you side with the killer, that's all of us getting our fix of what we secretly would fucking love that because it's a play of power. It's a play of power. And that's where the psychology comes in. You get to be the one who decides who lives and who dies instead of being the victim. And that,
Yeah.
I think, is why people, without knowing it, really enjoy slashers. They become Jason, they become
Yeah.
Michael Myers, and so they can kill people and revel in it, in the technique, because there's like 1002 ways to kill a teenager, and
Yeah.
and they revel in it every time because they can get away with it here. They don't have
Yeah.
to feel guilty about their own bloodlust.
Yeah. Right, but you prefer the supernatural stuff. So maybe we should do a little, because how many books have you got so far? Is it just 3 books plus you've got the one that come out with Underground? Is that all you've done, or have I missed any?
Yes, Underground is the short story one.
Yeah.
And the other 3 are full. Well, Beware the Chair is a novella.
Hmm.
I don't
That
like
was
to
your
call it a
first,
novel; it's too short. Yeah,
right?
actually, Beware the Chair was it was a very short story that I wrote
Mm,
for my daughter. Based, all my books are based on the truth. They're
right.
all based on the truth, but in a far-fetched way. Um,
Yeah.
so I wrote Beware the Chair as a novella, and then I wrote the other 2 full novels after
Mm.
that.
So
And
let's talk.
then Underground was for the music.
Yeah. Let's talk about the books then, one by one. We've got another half hour to go. So, Beware the Chair. Can we get like a brief synopsis? Can we say where it came from in your head and how you developed it from the short story for your daughter? What was the initial spark for it and that kind of thing?
This is very easy. She came home. She had a friend called Gita. Anushka's favorite nickname for herself was Storm, because I
Right.
was going to call her Storm. I told her this when she was little. I was going to call her Storm, but my mom said kids are going to tease her, so I called her Anushka. Um, so she's always liked the name Storm. Now her actual friend Gita, she really exists.
Right.
Anushka went to visit Gita and at Gita's grandparents. This book is very close to what actually happened, only I embellished why. Okay. She came home from the weekend and she said, Mom, you're not going to believe this. We saw a black thing sitting in a chair and we shat ourselves. And she's dead serious. And I believe her because I've seen some really weird shit myself. But that's a whole other thing. And then I said to her, okay, as a surprise, I wrote her this short story. It was about 5 pages long about Storm and Gita and what they see, and then what it actually was, why that thing was there. And I remember my bed was next to my desk, and she was sitting at my desk reading, thinking I'm asleep. And I remember at one stage, I just reached out and grabbed her leg while she was reading it.
So you was doing what your dad used to do to you, scaring your kids.
Yes, yes. So she, went ape shit and everything. So I knew this is going to be a good book. So, so I wrote the book as a novel, as a novella, to make it more official, so that she will
Right.
always have something to say. My mom wrote this book because of something I told her. So
That's
that's
cool.
how that book came to be.
And
And the cover I did myself as well. That is actually me sitting in the chair in my
right.
cottage, and it's
Let's
just
put you on.
embellished with Photoshop.
Let's put you on full screen so you can show the cover off to a little bit better to everybody. Oh, it's a bit too much glare. Yeah,
There
so
we
that's
go.
you. That's actually
Like
a picture
that.
of you, and then photoshopped. Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
So
It
it
was
looks.
me in a hoodie, and I was wearing all black,
Yeah.
and then I just smudged it with Photoshop, smudged it to make it look formless or a little bit
Yeah.
formal.
Cool. But you added, so you added elements of like a hidden secret, that kind of thing. Did that come from anywhere, or was that pure fantasy?
Pure fantasy. Also because of my my practice with the Order of the Black Sun books, where these books are, one editor called it intelligent fiction.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, because not only do I have to research everything to check that because these things were based in actual Nazi practices, what they did,
Yeah.
everything they did. Every book has a different thing that they did, and then these relic hunters go looking for these things.
But like
And
the
and
Spear of
because of
Longinus
that,
and stuff like that.
yes,
Yeah.
exactly. And then because of that, I have learned to write books with intense layering, not just character development, but uh, realism and detail. And so when I took Beware the Chair, the thing in the chair, I created an entire backstory,
Mm.
but I also created a subplot so that the twist would fall out of the backstory and catch you by surprise. So the good thing about having ghost written so many books for other people is that it helped me cultivate this ability to make things seem so realistic, because I give every person a backstory, a personality, glitches, like some guys would rub their nose the whole time, other people stutter. That's how you know who's who. And
Yeah.
it fleshes out the story. And that is why Beware the Chair has a mystery and then
Mm.
another mystery that actually comes through in the end.
So it's got some depth.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's necessary. It's very necessary. I don't like superficial things.
No, and it's all been self-published as well, isn't it? Have you had any chance to sort of to broach it to companies, or is it just impossible
No.
to do that kind of thing now?
Well, actually, I've been told by several people that I'm up there with Clive Barker and I'm up there with Stephen King with my
Mm.
ideas and stuff, which is great. And I've had an agent say to me, "Why haven't you been signed yet? What
Mm.
was, what's the problem? Are you struggling with your cover letter or something? Because the book is not a problem." And I said to him, "No, I've never bothered to send it to anybody because everybody is so obsessed with factual books or women's romance, or there's a very horror, like metal, is a very underground, very
Yeah,
almost
niche.
suppressed kind of thing. And
Mm.
I didn't think it would be worth sending it to an agent. But
Mm.
now with Unspeakable, I'm thinking of doing it. I'm thinking of seeing if the problem that I have with not self-publishing is that they take control of my art. I
Yeah.
don't like that. Self-publishing allows me to, from the cover to the story to the uh, everything is up to me.
Mm.
Whereas with publishing houses like record companies, they they use your art, but they ask you to change it so that it will fit their image.
No.
In other words, the things I write in Animosity will never be approved by a publishing house. Because of the things they like to represent. This isn't going to represent us well. This isn't going to give us a good image. Or, how everything's been labeled these days.
Yeah.
In Animosity, there is a very cruel scene with a horse, but it is necessary for the lead protagonist to lose his mind. And
Right.
all people will see at publishing houses, oh, it's animal cruelty. They don't see what, they don't care why this is happening in the story, why it's necessary.
Mm.
So that's another reason why I'm reluctant to send to publishing houses or to be published by publishers. I prefer
Yeah.
to do it myself. Then I can play by my rules.
Yeah. So the next book, I think the next one. I like the title of the next one. Is it The House That Ate Bone? Was that the name of the next one? Did
Yep,
I remember seeing you say that name came to you in a dream or something like that? Is that right? Or did I imagine that?
that's Unspeakable.
Oh,
The
okay.
book, the book I'm writing now came to me in a dream. Yes.
Ah, right.
Uh,
So
the
where did you
house,
get the? Yeah.
the house that ate bone came from moving into my house. Everybody calls it everybody calls it a quaint little cottage, but it was a 2-story, 6-bedroom farmhouse.
Right.
It was fucking huge, and I lived alone in it, and it's 300 years old. Now, outside the house, it had what do you call pea stone gravel? You know, it had
Just gravel, right?
stones.
Yeah.
And when I lie in bed in the morning, if the gardener walks past this, it had this crunching sound, like
Yeah.
right. And I thought I thought the first time it's the house making that sound, and it sounded like the house is chewing bones.
Yeah.
And I thought that would be a great name for a book, The House That Ate Bone.
Yeah.
And then I went with it from there on.
And what's the basic synopsis for that one? Do you want to tell the people where did the name came first, and then how did you turn the name into a story?
Well, it came from being in that house, and I was standing outside on my lawn, looking up at the house. It's a thatch house.
Yeah.
Now, to me, I've got this weird mind. I don't see thatching, I see fur. To me. And I'm thinking to myself, what if that is not thatching? Because it looks like bearskin, like fur. You know, it's brown. And I thought, what if that was something lying there, you know, and just waiting for someone to try and get into the house before it grabs you?
Yeah.
And that's how it began. And then also using the very grotesque history of the Irish potato famine.
Right.
Using that, because the house was standing during that time, the house I'm living in existed then. I thought to myself, what would happen? What if those people who died of supposed hunger did not die of hunger, but they were fed to this thing that was lying on top of this house,
Right.
and developed from there, to make it a little bit more realistic about, the pivotal character where the guy loses his mind and he kills his family, and the bones are stuck in the thatching because of this thing. And then people see bones falling out of the thatching, but they don't realize it's not thatching, it's an actual creature.
Right.
And that's how it came about.
Yeah. So would you say that was a supernatural one, or is it actually a monster from another dimension? Or
it's not from another dimension. It's
just
still
here.
there.
Right.
It's still there, yeah.
Or is it like dormant, is it?
It's a monster book. I went
Right.
monster with it. Has supernatural elements, as in I also involve Cernunnos, Pan, the god Pan.
Right.
The Celtic version is Cernunnos.
Yeah.
And where
I feel like the horned god.
Yes.
Yeah.
The horned one. Yes. I bring him in as well because he is the keeper of these creatures.
Right.
And where he the house, I'm going to give it all away, but he gets involved with the house.
Right. You do, because I would say you're kind of like anti-religion slightly, like the Abrahamic religions. You're into the old, like the Satru and the witchcraft and the old Celtic gods and that kind of thing. Does that get in quite a lot into your writing? I've been reading your short story book Underworld on the way here. That's what I knew about Cernunnos, the horned god, because I just read Matilda of the Wild Hunt or whatever it was.
I'm glad you read it.
Yeah.
I'm very much into the old gods. I still believe in the old gods, and I believe that they predate everything, and that's a dead giveaway that's the real deal. I don't believe in organized religion whatsoever, but the old gods are the old gods. They've always been there, so they should be mentioned.
Yeah. Cheers, Dad. My dad's brought me a beer.
Yeah, I'm falling behind on my drinking here.
So, next up then, Animosity. What's the story behind that one? That's the only one I haven't. I don't think that's the only one. I think it's the only one I don't own. I've got the other one. I'm sure I put the other ones from you. To be honest, I'm so lazy with reading books lately. I'm just like reading comics, and I just can't. I just can't sit down with a book anymore. But so I don't know what the story behind Animosity is. But is it to do with animals? You mentioned the horse dying. Is it animal related?
Yes, it is. It is animal related on many levels. It is involving a veterinarian. It's in Alaska. It's set in Alaska. It's very much a book that's subliminally is supposed to speak about poaching, the evils of poaching, the evils of bear bile farming, which
Uh,
people don't talk about much. Because I love the bears so much, there is a race of demon bears that are invoked every time there is poaching going on, to protect the bears against the bear bile farming. It also has
that,
many, many levels.
yeah. Was that the Ursai? Was that actually something that's believed already, or was it something you made up for the book?
That's no, it's all me.
Uh,
I created the Ursai because Ursus is bear. It's the
yeah.
Latin for the bear names.
Mm,
Um, I created the Ursai for In the Lair of the Bear Mother album,
yeah.
and then wrote the book according to explain what they are. And the book
Mm.
is about them as well. Yeah.
When just the name, it sounds like something that someone would believe in. Because so many native or older tribes or whatever would have that kind of totem, animal totems, wouldn't they? And it sounds
Yes.
like if you told me it was real and a certain
You believe it?
Alaska, yeah, I would have gone, oh yeah, you could spun
That's
me
the
on for about an
idea.
hour. So yeah,
Yeah. The Ursai and the LadyAxe. The LadyAxe being the witch, specifically of the Ursai. Every generation of witches, there's one witch that controls the Ursai, and that
yeah,
is an interdimensional creature that is conjured up to be sent out to kill poachers,
right.
basically.
So it's
Only
like,
this goes a bit weirder because the LadyAxe, the witch, her name is Volga. She has the ability to, she kisses you. If she kisses you, she instills an animal spirit in you. Whatever animal she chooses,
okay,
she can make you believe that you are that animal. So
right,
you essentially kill yourself by behaving like a certain animal, and your body is not made for that.
right.
Like if you believe you're an anaconda and you try to swallow someone whole, you're going to die, you know?
Yeah,
So that's what she does. She with a kiss, she instills this witchcraft in you where you forget you are you and you
right.
become an animal. That's what
So
she
you're kind
does
of
to the poachers.
possessed by an animal almost.
Yes, you get possessed
Yeah.
by an animal spirit and then you
Mm.
behave like that animal, which in essence kills you.
So if you think you're a wolf, you'll run out into the cold Arctic and blinking freeze to death.
Exactly. You'll try to attack a moose and the thing will trample you.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. You
that would make
forget you're
sense.
human. You forget you're
Yeah.
human. Because to me, if you're a poacher or you have the sick goal to cut a bear's paws off
Mm.
for medicine and leaving it there to bleed out, you are not human. You
Yeah.
have let go of your humanity, and that is what Volga does. She turns you into an animal because that's what you are when you're a poacher.
Is that something that's dear to your heart as well? Animals.
Yeah, I'm not one of those animal people at all, but I come from Africa and it pisses me off that animals are being mutilated for illogical things.
Yeah.
Stupidity really bothers me. It bothers
Yeah.
me when people can't put two and two together. And if you really think the hair from a rhino's horn gives you a hard on, there's
Yeah.
something wrong with your
Yeah.
mentality. There's something
That's,
wrong with your IQ.
yeah.
And and so that has to be addressed. And I think that is where the root of this lies.
I was going to mention rhinos because they're my favourite animal. I've loved rhinos since I was a
Really?
little boy. Yeah, I just love rhinos, and like
Why?
I've just thought of people chopping off their horns. Sorry.
Because I like unicorns. Why do you
Well, no,
like
I don't know. I don't know why I liked it. I remember when I was a kid, I had 30p pocket money, and I bought myself a plastic rhino. And
Oh,
as I got older, I actually had a good joke for it. I like rhino because they're big, grey, and horny like me. That's the joke that I came up with. But when I was a kid,
awesome.
when I first liked rhinos, I didn't
That's
have that
brilliant.
line, but it came along later.
Oh, that's excellent. That's brilliant.
Maybe it was set up for a joke when I was like 4. I was setting up the joke for the future kind of thing. I don't
That's
know.
brilliant. That's well done.
Okay. Right, so Underground is tied into the album Underground, and you've got like, was it 8, 7, 9, 10? How many short stories is that one?
8
8
stories.
short stories,
Yeah,
and they are
yeah.
quite a quick read as well. But they go well with the album. I need to actually have a read through them again whilst playing the album in the background. That would be a good way of doing it.
That's true. That's how you're supposed to do it. In Animosity and The House That Ate Bone, I also mention bands in certain parts of the book. I mention a band and a song.
Yeah.
For you to, if you want to, that would be the ideal song to listen to while you read the next section. So I like to mix it up with music always.
I just read the short story dedicated to Satis, the drummer from
Themis.
Yeah, Themis. I just read the story. I was like, what are you saying here, Natasha? Yeah. So I don't want to read, just psychologically read between the lines, but I'm getting some messages from this story here. I was like,
Yeah, it was. I was trying to get a perfect balance between what obsession does to you, how it destroys you, and it's actually not even about him. It's just him as an image, like I told you before. So it is. The story had to fit in with Halloween night and sacrifice.
Yeah.
And because I like to choose different places, that was perfect for Greece. Okay.
Yeah.
And but the story is more about what infatuation will do to you, or how being obsessed with someone or something ends up as worship, which is the worst thing that can happen, because that deity doesn't give a fuck about you.
Yeah.
You know, and be
it was a good
wary
story.
of who you worship. You know,
I was also trying to, like, I suppose these could be on different levels. I was thinking of Pan, like Pan, the Greek, the satyrs, that kind of, because there was definitely a sexy kind of, sex undertone going on with it, as well as an obsession.
That's supposed to be there. I mean, that's where the obsession. There is no obsession without sex. Okay. There's sex in everything. You just have to know where to look.
Yeah.
And any obsession to me, obsession psychologically is a form of arousal.
Right.
Your obsession with cars. Your obsession with.
I'm thinking comic books. I'm trying to think of where in Batman comics.
that pleasure you derive from that thing. That is why you keep craving it, because just like sex, it stimulates a pleasure in you.
Yeah.
And that is why I believe all obsessions, all infatuation is based sexually. Sex is not just about fucking, Sex is a very, very wide net.
That's where you get all these different fetishes. People get obsessed with feet.
Exactly.
Or
weird things that you don't think is sexual. Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah. Let's talk about then your. I was going to mention about your writing as well. Like, so as I've been lazy, I've started reading more, but it's definitely that. I was like florid. Is that the correct word? It's like very sort of flowery, poetic, prose like, and also kind of archaic. Like, it feels like old language. Like, it's not just, you're not just saying the bloke went in the pub and smashed him over the head. You're like, you put it in such a way as to make it, I don't know. I haven't got the words to say it like you would, but yeah,
that's what literature is about. I mean, you don't read a book. You can read a text on a phone. Why should I write a book to instill emotion in you with plain language? You don't feel emotion like you do when you do with metaphor, and metaphor is one of the biggest, the basis of poetry. So metaphor is very important, because that's the part where words become feelings. It's a secret language. It is like tasting something. It's food, but it's food, but it makes you feel good. So those two things don't make sense. But it's a kind of an amorphic reaction. Where you take one thing, you take a word. I can say one word to you. I can say grotesque.
Yeah.
You're immediately feeling,
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
If I say to you, scary.
Yeah. It hasn't got the same
text message.
Yeah, it hasn't got the same impact, the same kind of
So you
mental.
need flowery.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
And there's some words that actually sound like nasty, like like they say grotesque. That's got that kind of
Visceral.
visceralness to it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And like there's other words as well. For some reason, like this is not a horror word, but for some reason my girlfriend doesn't like the word moist. Like moist. Like,
Really? That's
yeah.
the thing. That's the thing, because my daughter doesn't like. There's so many people don't like the word moist, and I think it's hilarious.
I think moist things are nice, but anyway.
I think so too.
Right, let's talk about your upcoming book. We've got 5 minutes. It's gone like a blinking. All right, what's your ideal writing situation when you're sitting down to write a book? What is the best thing for you? You have music in the background, glass of wine, coffee. What is your ideal writing?
Darkness, solitude, and very, very loud heavy metal on my ears. Because of heavy metal being my pleasure.
Yeah.
So if you release, it's your happy place. You need to be in your happy place here, and that music creates a mood.
Yeah.
And with horror, it's perfect because heavy metal is both poetic and violent. If you write horror, it's the perfect music to listen to.
Yeah. And how about typewriter or on the keyboard, on the computer? Laptop.
Definitely.
Cool. So let's talk about your new one that you would say your new one. You're writing Unspeakable, was it?
Unspeakable, yes. That's the one I had to dream about. Yeah. I was told to write this book, and like I always say, this is sort of my motto. People always go, how do you know what to write in a story? I always say, I don't tell a story tells me. I am being told what to write. I'm just a conduit.
Yeah.
I'm being dictated to, and I dreamed of these 3 jinn telling me, sitting there with their black veils, going, unspeakable, unspeakable. I don't know why, because Arabs don't speak English, but that's what they said. Unspeakable.
Yeah.
And when I woke up, I knew that was my orders. I got my orders.
Yeah. Interesting. I was saying that kind of sounds kind of Lovecraft, the old unspeakable cults and unspeakable things, and I thought the House That Ate Bone had a very Lovecraftian kind of feel to it as well. It's like,
I'm glad you think so.
Like, House That Eats Bone, and I was like, it also very evocative kind of name. I was thinking, how does it eat bones? Is it like, are you in the house and suddenly your bones start disappearing from your arms? And I was like, thinking. And he was like,
and because the lead character is called Bone, that's her nickname. So there's many levels of it. It's a thing of when you say you eat bones is when you're struggling. That's where the famine came in, the hardship, eating, crunching down on bones.
You had no meat, so you had to cook the bones to nothing,
exactly. and cannibalism, and then it goes over to the crunching, and because of who she is and her past and everything, that's also chewing at her.
Right.
There's a lot of metaphor.
Yeah. How far are you into the new book now? You've had to move recently, haven't you? So you're not in a good situation for your writing.
No, not at all. Look at my room; it's so boring.
And it's noisy outside as well, isn't it? You're saying
it's noisy inside. The visitors here are insane till 3 a.m. Outside is a restaurant, so there's live music, and I can't hear myself think. So all day long, when I have to do normal work, I have to put Septic Flesh death metal on my ears, and it's fucking up my ears because I've got to live with headphones on. So I've put in earplugs with Septic Flesh on my ears, and then I can focus, then I can work.
All right. So is that what this one is about? The Unspeakable? Is it about Arabic demons or something like that, or jinn?
Yes, I'm mixing African black magic with Middle Eastern jinn. So it's sort of a political statement as well with what's going on in South Africa, but I'm bringing the jinn into it as a revenge mechanism.
Right.
But that's all I'm going to say. I'm not going to say how or what, but it will be 2 kinds of black magic coming together.
Going back to something I was thinking about earlier on, actually, I forgot to mention it. I remember because I know you're on Facebook, and I just remember at one point you moved into the house in Ireland. You were your imagination, because your imagination is so good for writing stories. You were scaring yourself with your imagination at one point, and you was imagining you'd seen things in the house and that kind of thing. Is that right? Did I remember that correctly, or what happened? Do you remember that incident?
No, I was actually surprised that that the house is not haunted.
Right.
So no matter how I try, nothing scared me in that house.
Right.
I could walk into pitch dark and not be afraid. And that sort of made me realize that whatever's there is like me. So
kindred spirit.
It evens out, yeah. So I was the house and the house was me. And
there's another stupid thing that I wrote down here, just because I was writing about you being a ghostwriter. Has anyone ever done a story about a ghostwriter who's a ghost, or a ghostwriter who's writing a book for a ghost? I mean, come on, that's a story on its own, that is.
I don't know. Is that a challenge? I'm sure someone must have done it somewhere in the 80s, because I do remember a movie called Ghostwriter, but I don't think it was about. I think it was a normal, like a mystery, like a thriller. But I'm not sure. But if that's a challenge, I can do it.
Well, I'm sure you've got plenty of better ideas than that, to be honest. Well, so everyone who wants to check out your writing, the link is in the blog down below. It takes you to the blog, and all your links are there. What's the name of the website they can get your books on?
Lulu.com is for my ebooks, and then also if they want a signed copy, they have to buy it from me directly at LadyAxe Lit.
Yeah, and those links are both in the blog. So if you're interested in picking up some, is there any do you do anything like samples or anything like that? Is there any anywhere someone can read, or they can listen to the bait pitch story that we put up on my channel?
They can listen to bait. Yeah, bait is one of my short stories, but also on LadyAxe Lit there are excerpts of what I write. Right. Nobody reads them, so
that's on Facebook. If anyone wants to check it out, go to the Facebook. The link is in the blog, and if you want to buy, you can get signed copies straight from LadyAxe Lit on Facebook, straight from Natasha, or you can go on Lulu and get ebooks, and and check out the audio recording that you did of your short story bait. That's on my channel as well. I'll try and put the link up actually no, I think that is actually in the blog as well. I'll put the video for that in the blog, so people can just go there. And I'll leave you say what you want to say to people, and I'll finish my beer.
I don't know, I have nothing to say. Listen to your gin. Could be any gin.
Oh, that's one of my favorite band names. Have you heard of that doom metal band from Bangladesh? I think they are. They're called Gin and Miskatonic.
No.
Yeah.
Oh, now I've got something to do.
Gin and Miskatonic. That's one of my favorite band names ever. That's just like,
that sounds awesome, dude.
Anyway,
definitely.
Everyone, check out LadyAxe's music, and Natasha's writing, and I've got an idea of maybe doing something on Halloween. Maybe we could have some kind of Halloween stream telling ghost stories or something. I don't know if anyone, you think that might be something that's worth doing, but
I'm always down for stuff like that. I love it.
Yeah. We'll talk about it. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me.
My pleasure. It's always cool chatting with you. And talk to you soon.
See you
bye. And
bye.
Bye. Thanks everyone who tuned in. See you later, everyone.